In 1998, Akeem Marino came forward and confessed to the rape and murder of a restaurant worker.
I did this awful crime and I was alone.
But this man, Chris Ochoa, had already confessed to that crime and was serving a life sentence.
I pleaded guilty and confessed.
One of them was lying. To find out who and why, scientists looked once more at the forensic evidence. Austin, Texas, the state's capital city. 20-year-old Nancy DePriest lived here with her husband, Todd, and 15-month-old daughter, Sylvia.
She was so very friendly and very open to anyone. She just loved people. She was just like a people person.
Nancy was a waitress at a Pizza Hut restaurant. On October 24th, 1988, she arrived for work at 7 a.m. Her job was to get the pizza dough ready for lunch before the rest of the employees arrived. The manager of the restaurant called several times that morning to make sure everything was all right, but there was no answer. When he stopped by the restaurant around 9:30, he found Nancy slumped under the bathroom sink, nude and barely alive. She had been shot in the back of the head. Nancy was rushed to the nearest hospital.
My son-in-law said, "Mom, there's been a robbery. They shot Nancy." I said, "Todd, how bad is she hurt?" He broke down and he said, "Mom, she's on life support."
Nancy died later that day without regaining consciousness.
I began to scream. I was totally hysterical.
The murder occurred before the restaurant opened, so there were no witnesses to the crime. The Austin Police Department found no signs of forced entry at the restaurant. The motive appeared to be robbery, since money was missing from the safe. On the floor of the bathroom, police found a .22 caliber shell casing from the murder weapon, and Nancy's autopsy revealed she had been sexually assaulted. 2 weeks later, the investigators got their first break in the case. Two employees from another Pizza Hut restaurant, 22-year-old Chris Ochoa and 19-year-old Richard Danzinger, went to the restaurant where Nancy had been murdered.
Then.
So we ordered a beer and he toasted to the memory of Nancy.
Nancy
Not a
DePriest.
problem.
We won't forget you.
To me, I found it kind of strange.
Nancy's co-workers quickly informed authorities. Ochoa and Danzinger were later questioned by police.
He started grilling me about what I know about this murder and this rape, and I told him nothing. We went round and round for a couple hours. I don't recall how many hours. But he said, at one point, he said, you know what? We know you're not capable of this, but we know you know something.
Detective Hector Polanco, at the time a 12-year veteran of the force, took over the interrogation.
At one point, he showed me pictures of death row. He showed them to me. He said, this is where you will live until you die. So I still kept on saying, I don't know anything.
Richard Danziger and his girlfriend, Donna Angstad, were also questioned.
They were absolutely horrible to me. One time, Hector Polanco pounded his fist on the table, and I thought he was coming across to grab me. I
How are you
came up out of my
doing?
chair and hit the wall behind me. It scared me so bad.
Donna said
I should
she
try
and Richard were together in
Diamond
Donna's
Up.
apartment
I got
at
Diamond
the time
Up.
of the murder.
I took a lie detector test, and they told me I flunked it.
2 days later, Chris Ochoa confessed to the rape and murder of Nancy DePriest.
Besides, I started this
I
now.
did it.
Might as well
I
finish it.
pleaded guilty. And it was
It's only a bit of a break from the.
He also
Well,
revealed
so anyway,
that his
so-
friend Richard Danziger was his accomplice. Ochoa said he and Danziger entered the restaurant with keys the two had obtained. They found Nancy alone, preparing pizza dough. After ordering her
How's
to remove
things
the money from
going?
the safe, Ochoa said he and Danziger bound, gagged, raped, and shot her. Ochoa said he was the one who pulled the trigger. When the DNA results came back from the lab, police had even more proof that Ochoa and Danziger were the killers. Chris Ochoa not only confessed to the rape and murder of Nancy DePriest, he became the state's star witness against his friend and co-worker Richard Danziger. Nancy's family was relieved that the case was concluded quickly.
Not so much satisfaction. I didn't feel that. I guess relief that they weren't going to be able to do it to someone else.
Bolstering Ochoa's confession was the DNA evidence. A blood sample from Chris Ochoa matched the DNA from semen on the victim's vaginal swab.
I examined a vaginal swab specimen from Nancy DePriest. DNA was extracted from spermatozoa on that swab, and then DNA typing was done using a single gene that we had available at that point in time, and a result was obtained from that gene that was actually compatible with Chris Ochoa, and about 10 to 16% of the population.
Statistically, there were 3 million other Texans who might have shared the same genetic marker. But this wasn't the only forensic evidence. A brown hair found in the restaurant bathroom was microscopically similar to Danziger's. Richard Danziger pled not guilty and insisted he was innocent. But the strength of Ochoa's confession and the forensic evidence were too great. The jury deliberated just 7.5 minutes and found Richard Danziger guilty of aggravated sexual assault. He was sentenced to life in prison. In return for his testimony, Chris Ochoa avoided the death penalty, but he was sentenced to life in prison.
And were nights that I would sit in my bed crying to God. Why? Why? I would ask him, I'm tired, God. Tired. I was very tired. And at some point, I wanted to end it all.
Life in prison was even harder for Richard Danziger. After 3 years behind bars, Danziger was assaulted by another inmate who mistook him for someone else. Danziger was kicked in the head with steel-tipped boots. He survived, but suffered permanent brain damage.
It's just, what's happened to him is horrible. He's going to need care for the rest of his life.
But the story doesn't end there. 8 years later, Austin police received a letter from Akeem Marino, who was serving 3 life sentences in another Texas prison for a string of robberies and sexual assaults. Marino claimed that he was the one who raped and murdered Nancy DePriest. Marino claimed he had undergone a spiritual awakening while incarcerated and wanted to set the record straight.
I did this awful crime and I was alone.
Marino said the El Paso Police Department had the gun he used to kill Nancy DePriest. They had taken it when he was arrested on an assault charge. Homicide detective Manuel Fuentes was assigned to investigate Marino's story.
I got a call from El Paso Police Department, and the detective there said, "You're not going to believe this, but that gun hasn't been destroyed. We still have it in evidence."
Scientists compared Marino's .22 caliber handgun to the bullet removed from Nancy DePriest. The ballistic examination did not reveal a match. It appeared there wasn't much more to investigate. 2 years later, Akeem Marino tried once again.
I want to thank Speaker Laney for your friendship.
This time, he sent a letter to then-Governor George W. Bush with a copy to the prosecutor's office.
I told him basically the same thing, that I had committed a murder in '88 at the Pizza Hut, and that there was 2 innocent men who I did not know locked up for it.
This time, Detective Fuentes visited Chris Ochoa in prison. Once again, Ochoa repeated what he had been saying for 10 years, that he and Danziger had acted alone.
And I told him, yeah, you're right, I did it. So you know what, just let me do my time.
And he said, as far as he knew, there wasn't a third person involved. It was just him and Richard that killed Nancy DePriest.
So there was little more authorities could do, especially since Ochoa's DNA matched semen found at the crime scene. It would take 1 more year before one of these men finally changed his story. For almost 11 years, Chris Ochoa continued to maintain that he and Richard Danziger were responsible for the rape and murder of Nancy DePriest. But 1 year after Akeem Marino wrote a letter to the governor's office saying he murdered Nancy DePriest, Chris Ochoa changed his story.
Did you kill Nancy DePriest?
No, ma'am.
Just tell me you did. Look me in the face and tell me you did it.
Ochoa now claimed that his confession had been coerced. He said he was physically assaulted, threatened, and denied access to an attorney during police questioning.
A female detective, an Hispanic detective. She come in and I asked her, you know, can I have an attorney? And she got real upset and said, you can't have one until you're officially charged.
In search for help, Ochoa contacted the Wisconsin Innocence Project, a group that investigates cases in which they believe an innocent person has been wrongfully convicted.
And I told them, please help me. I don't know who else to turn to. You know, I think one of my closing lines was that I told them, I've lost faith in the system, but I haven't lost faith in myself.
But the founder of the Innocence Project, John Prey, wasn't sure what to think.
We called up Chris's attorney to get his side of things and say, sometimes the attorneys say, I'm concerned about this case and he may be innocent. Unfortunately, in this case, we got the complete opposite. Chris's attorney told us that we are totally wasting our time on this case. He is very guilty.
And if Chris Ochoa was innocent, why did DNA tests place him at the scene of the crime? 12 years earlier, test could only analyze one gene from Nancy DePriest's vaginal swab, the gene called DQ alpha. But by the year 2000, the accuracy of DNA testing had advanced to a level where 10 genes could be analyzed.
The DNA testing that I'm doing today is more complicated, harder to interpret, more discriminating.
The Wisconsin Innocence Project asked local prosecutors to send Nancy DePriest's forensic samples for more sophisticated DNA testing, which they did. 12 years after Nancy DePriest's murder, Karen Scalise compared Chris Ochoa's blood DNA to the vaginal swab taken from the crime scene.
I sort of went, oh my God, and just immediately double-checked it to myself.
Just to make sure, additional DNA testing was also done by Ed Blake, who had performed the original DNA test a decade earlier.
When that work was done, ultimately Chris Ochoa, Richard Danziger, and Nancy DePriest's husband were all eliminated as the source of the spermatozoa from Nancy DePriest.
But there was still the issue of Marino's gun. Detective Fuentes decided to send it to another lab, the Southwest Institute in Dallas, for more tests.
The shell casing, without a doubt, matched the gun that we got from Akeem Marino. And this was the shell casing that was found inside the Pizza Hut. So now we had DNA, and we had a bullet or a shell casing that was ejected at the crime scene that matched the gun that we got from Akeem Marino.
As a last step, prosecutors compared Akeem Marino's DNA to the semen from Nancy DePriest's vaginal swab. It matched, just as Marino said it would.
Everybody says they're innocent in prison. But, yeah, some of us actually are.
Akeem Marino's confession includes a chilling account of what happened the day Nancy DePriest was murdered, but it also answered many questions.
I was wearing a workman's uniform with a false name on it. And I knocked on the side door, and Ms. DePriest came up and unlocked the door just before the restaurant opened.
Once inside, Marino held Nancy at gunpoint and demanded the restaurant's money.
Hey!
Yeah. Yeah, doing it now, just drain your bowl.
We went to the restroom where I disrobed her, and then assaulted her one time.
PCP.
After that, I told her that I was going to handcuff her to the plumbing underneath the sink and leave her there.
PCP.
I'll ask her later.
She got underneath the sink. I shot her in the back of the head one time with that .22 firearm.
Well, like I said, I do like Diamond Art now. Do something different. I do have Diamond Art.
I couldn't find it anywhere. After that, I went back, got my bag, packed my stuff up, and I left.
Marino says Nancy reminded him of a female guard he knew from prison, a woman he detested.
When I came out, not only did I intend to kill a whole bunch of blacks and Mexicans, but I told myself the first white woman I ran across that looked like I was going to blow her brains out. That's exactly what I did.
Ticky. There you go.
But the bigger question is why Chris Ochoa would repeatedly confess to a crime he didn't commit.
You have to be a psychologist. I'm not. It's hard for me to conceive. In fact, when I first met Mr. Ochoa's attorneys and Mr. Danziger's attorneys, when they first brought me back, the first thing I asked them was, what in the world made Ochoa confess?
Most people will come and tell me, I would never confess that. You know what?
To get them,
Don't tell me that.
you know, lime curtains down for winter.
Ochoa said he was threatened with the death penalty unless he confessed. A technique most law enforcement interrogation experts say is improper.
The law, fortunately or unfortunately, allows police officers to lie to individuals being interrogated.
What they can't say is, if you don't confess to me, you're going to get the death penalty, if they knew that to be a lie, or if you do confess to me, I'll make sure you don't go to prison or you don't get charged on this crime. So they can lie about the evidence and they can lie about other circumstances having to do with the interrogation, but they can't tell lies that could be regarded as promises or threats.
Ochoa said his confession included details of the crime because police showed him pictures of the crime scene before his confession.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of a circumstance in which it would be appropriate, because it contaminates the suspect, and it means that if they are innocent and made the false confession, you'll never know.
Ochoa also says he was threatened physically.
Looked me up and down and said, "You're young, you've never been in jail, you're gonna be fresh meat and they're gonna have you. I'll put you in the cell where they'll have you." And to me, in my mind, that triggered off, well, they're gonna rape me.
Experts say the way to prevent police-induced false confessions is to videotape the entire interrogation. If a suspect later alleges police misconduct in the interrogation room, the videotape can be evaluated.
If Chris's confession had been videotaped from start to end, there is no way that this would have happened. First of all, the police officers undoubtedly would not have acted as they did. It would have been a deterrent to their misconduct.
Currently, only 2 states require all suspect interrogations to be videotaped: Alaska and Minnesota. The Austin Police Department changed its policy and now videotapes the interrogations in all homicide cases. After 12 years in prison, on January 16, 2001, Chris Ochoa was a free man. 2 months later, Richard Danziger was released to the care of his family. Because of the brain damage he sustained as a result of the prison fight, Richard Danziger will require specialized care for the rest of his life.
Sometimes I think about Richard and I feel very bad. I mean, because I didn't have the courage to face up whatever might come to me so that he wouldn't go to prison.
The officers involved in Chris Ochoa's interrogation have all refused to comment.
I was a little kid, they told me that police officers were there to take care of you, to protect you. I thought that they couldn't do no wrong. I thought they were honest. But I see that not all of them are.
I lost my child. I loved her so much. I miss her every day still. For 13 years, I miss her every day. And Chris lost 12 years, his youth, his whole youth. Richard Danziger is brain damaged from a beating he received in prison. He's still serving that life sentence. He'll serve it out.
In 1991, this tranquil pond in rural Connecticut was the scene of a horrific crime. 2 young boys were beaten, thrown into the water, and left for dead. Investigators had little evidence until they examined the pond itself and found thousands of clues invisible to the naked eye in a simple drop of water. Waterford, a small Connecticut town where the water table is so high, homes are built around numerous small ponds and lakes. In 1991, two boys we'll call Stephen and Bobby decided to spend their afternoon fishing at their favorite spot, Stenger's Pond.
Oh, that was pretty good. I told you.
Sometime later, they were approached by three older boys they didn't know. Without warning, one pulled a knife. The other two threw Stephen and Bobby to the ground. Stephen tried to fight back, but was hit on the head with a baseball bat, almost knocking him unconscious. Both boys had their hands and feet bound with duct tape and their mouths covered. Once out in the pond, Stephen was hit once again and held underwater so that he would drown. Bobby was next. Fortunately, he saw the bat coming and ducked, then pretended to be unconscious. After throwing Stephen and Bobby's fishing rods in the water, they took the boys' bicycles and fled. Bobby was able to remove the duct tape from his hands, mouth, and feet. He swam to Stephen to try and save him. By the time he got there, Stephen was unconscious. Bobby managed to get him to shore, then carried him a quarter-mile to the nearest home. Deborah Chamberlain heard a frantic knocking at her door.
One had a serious head wound and was not very coherent, and the other was just almost hysterical. And so I knew that something awful had happened to the two boys, and that would be something that we would sort out over the next couple of minutes. But I think the duct tape was really almost my first impression, because I thought, oh my God, someone taped their wrists together.
Stephen was rushed to the emergency room of Lawrence and Memorial Hospital. Dr. John Urbanetti was Stephen's doctor.
Despite the number of people that I've seen with this kind of circumstance, he came as close as I've ever seen anyone come to not surviving.
As Stephen lay in intensive care, doctors questioned whether he would live or die. And Waterford police had questions of their own. Who had tried to murder Stephen and Bobby? And why? Waterford Police Detective Donald McCarthy was assigned to investigate the assault and attempted murder of the two young boys at Stenger's Pond. 13-year-old Stephen was fighting for his life, the victim not only of an attempted drowning, but of massive head wounds.
One of the doctors had told one of my detectives at the time that it was the closest he had ever seen anybody come to drowning and not being dead.
He was very lucky. The older child was unconscious. Had he not had his little friend with him, he probably would have drowned, I think.
Stephen's friend Bobby had escaped serious injury.
I think the remarkable thing is he had the presence of mind to immediately go to his friend and pull his friend from the water.
There's no doubt in our minds, if he did not remove that duct tape, the older male would have died if he did not remove him from that body of water.
When he came to the door, the little guy, amazingly, was quite a bit smaller than his friend, was just literally supporting him completely.
Police went to Stenger's Pond to collect evidence, but they ran into a major obstacle. The crime scene was a body of water.
The fishing poles, the tackle box, the suspects had tried to sanitize the crime scene by throwing those items in the water so that the police would not recover them, making it difficult that the fact that they were submerged in water, we would normally not have fingerprints available to us.
The bat used as the weapon was found floating in a nearby sewer grate, but there were no fingerprints. And any other possible evidence, such as hairs and fibers, had apparently been washed into the water. Police talked to residents of the neighborhood closest to Stenger's Pond to see if they had seen anything unusual. Susan Picardi came forward to say that earlier on the day of the attack, a young teenager she had never seen before came to her door asking for help.
Can I help you?
Yeah, I was walking down the street when I began to feel a little lightheaded and hungry. May I come in and get something to eat?
He said he wasn't feeling well. He was a diabetic and was in need of something, whether it was sugar or orange juice or a piece of chocolate or something. I immediately felt bad for him and invited him in.
Why don't you come in and have a seat, and I'll get you some juice.
Thanks.
Mrs. Picardi gave the young man a glass of orange juice. A few minutes later, he said he was feeling better, thanked her, and left.
Because I can call a doctor.
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
Later, as Mrs. Picardi was about to take a shower, she saw something unusual in her bathroom mirror.
And I caught the image of what was going on in my backyard from upstairs. And I saw two other youngsters in the corner of my yard, teenagers, 16-ish, around there. A redheaded boy and another Afro-American young man.
And they were later joined by the young man who just left Mrs. Picardi's home.
She gave me orange juice. She treated me so nice.
The boys had a bright green baseball bat and what looked like rolls of duct tape.
I automatically panicked and knew whatever they had planned was not going to happen at my house. So I yelled out the window to them, I think you better leave. It's obvious that you're planning something or you're up to trouble, and I'm calling the police. So if you know what's good for you, then you better get going.
Susan Picardi was able to provide a detailed description of the boy who'd come to her door.
Mrs. Picardi told us two things that stood out. One, he was wearing eyeglasses and described those eyeglasses to us. The other was he had an unusual shaped scar, a U-shaped raised scar on his forearm.
Since the perpetrators were apparently on foot, police checked the neighborhoods nearest to Stenger's Pond.
We put officers in that neighborhood and started doing neighborhood canvasses in that based on the description of the three suspects. As a result, we were able to identify the suspect immediately.
This suspect, 17-year-old Brian Davis, had the upraised scar described by Susan Picardi. Neighborhood informants identified the two friends Davis spent the most time with. One was 17-year-old Christopher Green. The other was an African-American juvenile whom we'll call Jason. All three suspects fit the descriptions provided by Susan Picardi, but denied they were involved in the assault. In Christopher Green's house, police found a knife like the one Bobby had told them about. In Green's basement, they found a pair of wet, muddy sneakers.
We inquired of the suspect, why are these things wet? And he was trying to tell us that it was as a result of walking through mud puddles and things like that. As soon as he said that, we started working on a theory that, how do we attack this? He's coming up with a defense. This is how my clothes got wet. I was playing in mud puddles and things like this.
Was the mud on Green's sneakers from Stenger's Pond? And if so, how could scientists prove it? For the answers, police turned to a new type of forensic science, one that had never before been used in a criminal case anywhere in the world. "13-year-old Stephen, the oldest of the two boys who were assaulted and left for dead in Stenger's Pond, was in intensive care for a week. His condition gradually improved. He was extremely fortunate. Doctors found no evidence of permanent injury.
Fortunately, he'd had an episode that was short enough so that he suffered no permanent injury to his brain. But during the time of recovery, he needed a fair amount of intensive care support.
Police had 3 suspects in custody: Brian Davis, Christopher Green, and a juvenile we'll call Jason. All denied any involvement in the attacks. Brian Davis and Jason had no prior brushes with the law, but Christopher Green had a long history of petty offenses and small-time violence. Police took the sneakers from Green's basement, but no one was sure if the mud on the soles could be used as evidence.
We had the shoes. How do we find out now, find someone who's going to tell us what to do with this? You understand exactly what it is we're trying to do.
Waterford police spent weeks calling around the country, looking for someone who might be able to help. The FBI told them of a scientist at nearby Connecticut College.
Here we are, we're going all over the United States. Connecticut College is 5 minutes from our police station.
The scientist was Dr. Peter Siver, a forensic limnologist, an expert on microscopic life in freshwater environments. Dr. Siver was asked to find out if the mud on Green's sneakers came from Stenger's Pond. He took the mud from the sneakers and added a mixture of sulfuric acid and potassium dichromate, which removed the dirt, leaving behind only the life forms that may have existed in the water. It's a world invisible to the naked eye.
Inside that small drop of water exists literally hundreds of different organisms. They come in all different arrays, all different shapes, all different colors. It's an entirely different world underneath that one drop of water.
And what Dr. Siver found were diatoms, microscopic single-cell organisms, a form of algae. Each diatom is housed in an incredibly complex structure made up of silica or glass.
I would say that diatoms are pieces of art. They're pieces of art because each diatom can make exactly the same pattern each time it makes a new cell. And these patterns are very ornate. They're highly artistic in their look.
While diatoms may be art, they can also be pieces of evidence. Any body of water has hundreds, if not thousands, of species of diatoms. The types of diatoms and how many exist of the various species is unique to that body of water.
In any given water body, you can essentially examine the microscopic organisms and, in effect, create a fingerprint for that water body.
On the sneakers, Dr. Siver found large numbers of one type of diatom known as eunotia. Shown here, eunotia are characterized by the crescent shapes of their glass shells. There were 3 species of eunotia on the suspect's sneakers, and they were there in unusually high concentrations. And Dr. Siver found one more clue. He found what's known as a scaled chrysophyte. Scaled chrysophytes are related to diatoms, but unlike diatoms, they can swim. There was only one species of chrysophyte in the mud, Malamonas caudata, shown here magnified 2,000 times. When Dr. Siver analyzed the water samples from Stenger's Pond, he found the same high concentrations of eunotia and the same species of scaled chrysophyte. The fingerprint of the water at Stenger's Pond was the same as the sample on the sneakers of Christopher Green. This was the break police had been counting on.
One thing that we found is there's always a scientist out there. As off the wall as it may sound, or what you're trying to accomplish, we have found there's always somebody out there that will listen to you.
Christopher Green, Brian Davis, and Jason were arrested and charged with assault and attempted murder. But the question now turned to motive. Why did they attack the two young boys? And was there another intended victim that day? Forensic scientists found a way to prove that one of the suspect's sneakers had been in the water at Stenger's Pond, where the two young boys had been assaulted and left for dead.
I think the physical evidence in this case was just overwhelming. And the diatoms and the pond evidence, or the aquatic evidence, whatever way you want to use it, was just devastating. And I think the defense attorneys realized that.
The forensic analysis showed that when Christopher Green went into the water to strike his victims, he got mud on his shoes, mud that contained the microscopic fingerprint of the water in Stenger's Pond. The diatoms in that mud clearly tied him to the crime scene.
For me, I thought it was unique and unusual because it's something that you normally don't read about in textbooks.
Even though Stephen and Bobby's bicycles were stolen after the assault, police and prosecutors do not believe robbery was the motive.
These three kids, I am totally convinced, were on a mission that day. As a result of interviewing the three after their arrest, they went out that day to look to kill somebody. There's no doubt in my mind.
Can I help you?
Yeah.
Police believe that Susan Picardi was originally the intended victim. Brian Davis did not have diabetes as he claimed, but only used it as an excuse to gain entry to her home.
Have a seat, and I'll get you some juice.
Thanks.
When he rejoined his accomplices in Susan's backyard, they may have been planning how to get into the house.
The real alarm bells went off when I went upstairs and I saw two boys in the corner of my yard. And then I sort of all put it together, and then I started feeling like I was just set up.
Fortunately, Susan Picardi saw them in her bathroom mirror and called the police. She looks back to that day and often wonders how close she was to danger.
A great way to describe it as a sixth sense. The mirror was in the right place. The kids were in the right place. It was meant to be for me to see them and to, just by their body language, understand that something is not right here.
Police determined that Christopher Green, the only one of the defendants with a history of violence, had instigated the attacks.
Christopher Green was probably the ringleader for the other two. He was the one that brought the bat. He was the one that brought the duct tape. He was the one that did the striking on our victims. He's the one that basically directed the other two.
Brian Davis and Christopher Green were both tried as adults and were sentenced to a minimum of 18 years in prison. Their 16-year-old accomplice, Jason, was only 2 weeks shy of his 17th birthday when he committed the crime. As a result, he was tried and convicted as a juvenile and was sentenced to spend time in a facility for young offenders. He has since been released. The microscopic diatom evidence on Christopher Green's sneakers, so simple in purpose, so magnificent in design, and so potent as evidence. For Waterford police and for law enforcement around the world, the case set a precedent.
It's a landmark case. It was the first time that this evidence, or evidence of an aquatic environment, meaning the diatoms, were used to place a suspect at a crime scene.
We found that it had never been used before What was nice about it is they were willing to take it on and try it. And that was the key for us.
Shortly after this case, law enforcement in Switzerland solved the murder of a young boy using diatom evidence. The boy had drowned, and the species of diatoms in the victim's lungs matched the species of diatoms found on the gas pedal of the suspect's automobile. Both cases were solved because a group of Connecticut detectives had a hunch that some mud on the bottom of a shoe might tie a suspect to a crime.
I would never say give up being the old-fashioned, hard, beaten-the-road cop, but you've got to be aware of the sciences that are there to help you. If you don't, you're beating yourself.
A lot of the thoughts that Lieutenant McCarthy came up with, we always thought were unusual. But 9 out of 10 times he was right. I have to say 99.8% of the time he was right.
In 1988, the body of a young woman was discovered in an Ohio river under ice. Most of the evidence found at the crime scene, hairs, fibers, and fingerprints, had been washed away. But the victim's 6-year-old son unwittingly told investigators all they needed to know about the killer. And he did it without saying a word. The clue was in his genes.
Halfway up through there, walk down through, and we'll pick up this trash, clean up this road.
A troop of Boy Scouts headed to Possum Run Creek one Saturday morning in January of 1988. Their mission was to pick up aluminum cans for a recycling project.
Hey, use them all. The guy's murdered. Look, who's that dog?
In the icy creek in rural Ohio, they spotted what appeared to be a mannequin.
They saw something just under the ice, submerged.
It was the body of a young woman. Local police took every possible precaution to preserve trace evidence by wrapping the victim's body in a sheet before taking it to the morgue. A check of missing persons reports identified the woman as 32-year-old Margie Coffey, the single mother of 2 young children. She had been reported missing 10 days earlier.
The police had found her vehicle down off of Park Avenue East by a bar, and she was a missing person by the time this body was located in the over by the Mohican Park.
The autopsy revealed that Margie Coffey had been strangled with her own scarf. The coroner estimated she had been dumped in the creek 10 days earlier, the same day she disappeared. Margie Ramey was her maiden name. She was one of 6 children who grew up in the heartlands of Ohio on the outskirts of a town named Butler.
And she was an outgoing girl, personal. She was a robust girl, and she loved life. She worked on the farm, and then she would help her mother on the farm. They had a lot of cattle to take care of, and she helped in that.
Margie grew up in a loving, religious home. But in her teenage years, as most kids do, she yearned for independence began spending most of her time in Mansfield, a larger city about 15 miles northwest of Butler. She made friends with an unsavory crowd.
She got into some activities that were subject to prosecution by the law, and they were mainly street crimes, that type of thing that probably were very low level, but that's how we got to be acquainted with her during our work on the street.
Those street crimes allegedly included prostitution and illegal drug use. Eventually, Margie rejected that life. She met a man named Steve Coffey. The two married and had a daughter.
It's basically not quite a loaf
the marriage soured,
with a bit of brown bread.
And Steve divorced.
Yeah?
To support
Just give
herself
it to the
and her
birds,
daughter,
eh?
Margie worked as a waitress. She also enrolled in college to study
You're
law
right, shouldn't it?
enforcement. And during this time, Margie had another child out of wedlock. This time, a son, Brandon. Police investigating her murder wondered if Margie had returned to the streets to support her children.
Well, I know her family helped her some, but she didn't make a lot of money and going to school. No, she didn't make a lot of money working in a restaurant.
As police knew from experience, life on the streets meant special dangers and a large pool of potential suspects.
Hello, Poppy.
Maybe there's somebody in her past that has a reason to want her dead. Maybe she's done something or not paid something. Maybe some street person has come to this conclusion that they ought to kill her.
With no suspects or leads, police hoped that the rushing water of Possum Run Creek had not washed away evidence which could lead them to Margie's killer. When 32-year-old Margie Coffey was found strangled in a frozen creek, police wondered if her past had finally caught up with her.
In her particular case, since she had a background of some activity that was certainly against the law, we looked into that possibility that she may have slipped back into that drug environment.
But friends said that wasn't the case. Margie had been focusing her attention on her family and her education.
They were just adamant that they had not seen her, she hadn't been around, and to their knowledge, she had completely cleaned up.
So the only thing what's left in the freezer now is 4 pound cakes.
Margie was raising,
So I've just
taking
taken
care of the
6 out.
children on her own, and
Yeah?
She loved her children.
I didn't realise we had all that pakora. There's 3 bags in there.
I feel that Margie was a good mother.
Don't need any more then.
Yeah, we do.
She had also
Just keep
rediscovered
stocked up on them, and the plain ones as well.
I believe she wanted to be a Christian.
Before they go up.
From all that I could gather from her, that's what she was striving for. To be better, to live better, to act better, and forget all about anything in the past.
Police learned that Margie had been actively dating since her divorce. Among the men she was seeing were 2 Mansfield police officers, both of whom were married.
She likes
One
that, doesn't she?
was Robert Lemon, a veteran of the force.
He indicated to us that it had ended sometime before that, probably a year and a half minimum, and that he had not had any contact with her and even spoken to her for any reason.
The other was Lieutenant Charles Oswald. He too said his relationship with Margie was over.
Lieutenant Oswald was very much in love with his wife, oftentimes spoke about what they did on weekends and things like that. He was a type of police officer that other police officers, I would say, would try to emulate.
Lieutenant Oswald furnished a police report indicating he had been on duty that night on a drug investigation. The trail of Margie's killer was growing cold.
We had no fingerprints, we had no weapon, we had to explore the other possibilities, and those possibilities really were going to come from her.
Margie Coffey was last seen alive at this diner, sitting in a booth with her school books open, studying for a class. Detective David Messmore interviewed the owner of the diner, who said that Lieutenant Oswalt was in the diner the same time as Margie. The two weren't sitting together, but they did acknowledge one another.
Hi, how are you?
It was a very distressing situation. Not only did I work with him, I knew he was a very good policeman, but I've been friends with him. And it was very upsetting to me to think that he might have been involved in a crime like that.
When confronted with this information, Lieutenant Oswalt refused to comment. Margie's parents laid their daughter to rest, an excruciating task few parents are prepared for.
Margie's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ramey, suffered from that day on. There was times that they would just break down and cry when they would see a picture of Margie, or when Mrs. Ramey would talk to me.
Little did police realize that Margie's own son would provide a tantalizing clue, one that would lead them to the killer. As the search for Margie Coffey's killer continued, a Mansfield police officer told homicide investigators about a suspicious incident that occurred the night Margie was killed. The officer said he saw Lieutenant Charles Oswalt, who had been linked romantically to Margie, on foot, out of uniform, and behaving strangely near the police station.
And he had a leather jacket on, which would be unusual at that time of the night due to the fact that he was working.
This officer said, "What's going on? How you doing?" And he kind of ignored him. And he continued on walking into the police department through the back way.
Oswalt's behavior cast doubt on his claim that he was investigating a drug operation that night.
For him to be nervous and excited in that period of time was kind of unusual. That kind of took the luster or the punch out of his alibi.
In the forensics lab, Margie Coffey's clothing would soon tell a story of its own.
We had a scarf, you had leg warmers, you had a heavy coat. Once the clothing is dried, basically it'll be hung on a hanger, just like your clothing would be at home. There'll be a piece of paper placed underneath in case anything naturally falls off. And then the article is simply held and scraped with a spatula all the way down to help lift these articles off and let them fall onto the paper to be collected.
While most of the trace evidence had been washed away by the water, a very small amount remained.
We recovered a number of hairs and fibers, in particular 2 fibers, red in color. The presence of these 2 fibers, about 1/4 of an inch in length and no more than twice the size of a human hair across, were all we had to really work with.
While different fibers may look similar to the naked eye, under a microscope, they are very distinctive. The foreign fibers on Margie's coat and leg warmers were triangular in shape, or trilobal. From the side, this trilobal shape gives the appearance of having a stripe running along the side. Trilobal carpet is usually found in high traffic areas like hotels and automobile interiors, since it hides dirt. Tony Tambasco took carpet samples from every location where Margie had been in the days before her murder. Tambasco thought he found what he was looking for in the home of Margie's parents.
And at Margie's parents' house, we found a floor mat that actually had red carpet. The red carpet fibers in the floor mat looked very similar to those that we had recovered from the victim.
But under a microscope, that carpet was not similar to the fibers on Margie's clothes. Since Lieutenant Oswalt was seen in the diner with Margie on the night she disappeared, Tambasco wanted to examine the police cruiser Oswalt had been driving that night. Most police vehicles are not carpeted because of heavy use and have rubber flooring instead. But police records revealed that on the night in question, Lieutenant Oswalt was the watch commander, and the watch commander's vehicle was different from the others.
The unique thing about that particular cruiser, cruiser number 306, was it was a supervisor's car. It wasn't your standard police car that you buy every year with the fleet. It was bought at a public auction.
The Mansfield Police had gone to an auction and purchased a Chevy Caprice Classic, a full-size car for their commanders. And of course, the upper echelon of the police department have a little nicer vehicle than the guys in the street.
The carpet in the watch commander's car was red. Tabasco took a small sample from the vehicle. At first, it looked similar to the carpet in Margie's parents' house. But under a microscope, the fibers told a different story and were similar in all respects to the fibers found on Margie's clothing.
We looked at color. You can see the color's the same. We looked at diameter. You can see the diameter is consistent. We looked at the trilobal design, and the pattern does show that.
Chemical tests revealed that both sets of fibers had been dyed with the same chemicals. But fiber evidence, unlike DNA or a fingerprint, is not definitive.
The presence of the fibers, being consistent with the fibers in the vehicle, is not an identification to the exclusion of all others. It's not an absolute. There's no way anyone should come to court, or there's no way anyone can come to court and testify that that fiber came from that carpet. It's just not going to happen.
But even more damning evidence against Officer Oswalt would come from Margie's 6-year-old son, Brandon. The circumstantial evidence in Margie Coffey's murder all pointed to Lieutenant Charles Oswalt. So did the forensic evidence. The 2 red carpet fibers on Margie's clothing were microscopically similar to the carpet in Oswalt's automobile. But the question haunting police was motive. If Oswalt murdered Margie Coffey, why did he do it? After Margie had given birth to her second child, Brandon, she told social services that she couldn't identify the baby's father since the pregnancy was the result of a rape. But later, when she applied for financial aid at college, she was required to identify Brandon's father and explain why she wasn't receiving child support.
When she became a Jehovah's Witness and they began to counsel with her, they found these details out. They said, look, you can't lie. You're to tell the truth.
And she named Chuck Oswalt as the father.
With this news, prosecutors asked Oswalt to undergo a paternity test. It revealed that the likelihood of Oswalt being Brandon's father was greater than 99%. Investigators also discovered that Oswalt had refused to pay for child support when Margie asked, possibly because he didn't want his wife to find out about his infidelity.
Lieutenant Oswalt was married, had children. In fact, up until all of this broke, his wife didn't know anything about Margie Coffey, did not know that he had a child by another woman. And so I'm sure that her finding that out certainly was motive for what happened.
Oswalt allegedly offered Margie a few $1,000s from an insurance settlement, which Margie refused as insufficient. During Charles Oswalt's murder trial, prosecutors presented one more piece of evidence against him. A woman who had once worked for police as a decoy in prostitution investigations, Charlene Dry Sawyer, testified that she, too, had been having an affair with Oswalt. Sawyer claimed that Oswalt had not only told her he murdered Margie Coffey, he also provided details of the crime. Sawyer said that after Oswalt and Margie saw one another in the diner, they went to Oswalt's police car to talk. They discussed the child support matter and Oswald's offer of $3,000 to end the dispute.
Take the $3,000 and get out.
No, it's not enough.
With Margie's refusal, the conversation grew heated, and Margie threatened to disclose that Oswald was Brandon's father.
I will file a lawsuit, and your wife and kids will find out about this.
Little slut.
Margie slapped him. Oswald responded by strangling her with her own scarf. The forensic evidence reveals that Oswald put Margie's lifeless body in the back seat of his police car, where her coat and leg warmers picked up the tiny red triangular-shaped carpet fibers. Later, prosecutors say Oswald drove to the bridge over Possum Run Creek and dumped the body into the water in the mistaken belief that any incriminating evidence would be washed downstream.
You know, when it's yellow and it waddles and it quacks, it's probably a duck. And that's the case that we had here.
At his trial, Lieutenant Oswald took the stand in his own defense and denied killing Margie Coffey. He repeated his claim that he had been working alone that night on a drug investigation and offered the typed police report to prove it. But prosecutors contended that the report was bogus, implying that Oswald himself had typed the phony report after the murder to give himself an alibi. The jury found Lieutenant Charles Oswald guilty of voluntary manslaughter and abusing a corpse. He was sentenced to 10 to 25 years in prison. To this day, Oswald insists he did not kill Margie Coffey.
He may deny it, and he may go to the grave denying it. I think he is guilty. Now, if I'm wrong, God forgive me.
For residents of Mansfield, the ultimate betrayal is a policeman who commits murder.
I mean, it's bad enough to murder someone, but then when you're supposed to be protecting people and then using the office of authority to kill someone, then that's the lowest murder that I can think of.
He will never, ever, ever admit that crime. I don't care if they keep him in jail till he dies. He will go to his grave with that in his mind. He will never, ever. And I really believe that.
Prosecutors say that it was solid police work and some luck that helped seal the case.
The presence
Yeah? Yes, I am. So it's just doing this colour, then I'm done. I will be live later on. Thank you so much for joining. See you guys later. Bye.